Okay, then I will begin. This reading is from Chris Hedges, and I will introduce Chris Hedges in case some of you haven't heard of him. Chris Hedges is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who spent nearly 2 decades as a foreign correspondent in Central America, Africa, the Middle East, and the Balkans. He has worked for the Christian Science Monitor, NPR, and the New York Times. And the reading here begins. These are pretty much his words. The terminal decline of the United States will not be solved by elections. The political rot and the depravity will continue to eat away at the soul of the nation, leading to movements led by followers of the Christian right and by Trump and his followers. They promise prosperity. They promise a return to the past. They promise law, order, and security. Many in the working class yearn for vengeance and moral renewal. This, along with the corruption of the billionaires who manage our failed democracy, is part of the twisted pathology that infects civilizations that are headed toward oblivion. As an investigative reporter, I witnessed the collapse of communist regimes in Eastern Europe and in Yugoslavia. I have smelled this stench before. The removal of Trump from office will only exacerbate the lust for racist violence that he incites. But make no mistake here, those who rule this country will continue ruling this country under Biden, just as they did under Obama, under Bush, Clinton, and Reagan. The militarized police will not stop attacking poor neighborhoods. The endless wars that our country has engaged in will not end. The bloated US military budget will not be reduced. Our country has the world's largest prison population. This will continue. The manufacturing jobs that have been shipped overseas will not return. Social inequality will continue to grow. The healthcare system will continue to cheat the public and to price millions more out of decent care. Immigrants and dissidents will continue to be defamed and attacked. I have 2 questions. 1, does it ring true? And 2, what are humanist solutions to this, if it does ring true? And here, since Hedges' message seemed to be entirely negative, I should present his view of what to do. He says we must mount independent political movements and form our own parties to sweep Democratic and Republican elites aside or be complicit in cementing into place corporate tyranny. There's another way to look at things, and it's this. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. And that clearly is not the way to go.
A very timely reading for our presenter today. Our presenter today, Mr. Ron Millar, will be speaking for about 20 minutes. So we have plenty of time for questions and answers. Mr. Millar is the Political Director and PAC Coordinator at the Center for Equity and Freethought Equality. The mission of the organization is to increase the number of atheists, humanists, agnostics, and free thinkers in public office. Mr. Millar has a 30-year career in Washington, working with nonprofit and advocacy groups to further this mission. It's 53 days until the election, and with our Oregon skies looking the same color as our incompetent president, it's easy to get discouraged. To get us focused as a group on what we can do between now and November 3rd, please welcome Ron Millar.
Thank you very much, Todd. I really appreciate that. And I like Chris Hedges a lot. There's a little negative, depressing first statement, but I think he does do that to get us motivated to become more engaged. And that's what this presentation is all about, is getting our community engaged, because we've seen what happens when the white Christian nationalists have risen to power, and we are a sizable community now, and we have the potential to counter them. So I think it's imperative that we get organized and do so. So again, I'm Ron Millar. I'm the Political and PAC Coordinator for the Center for Freethought Equality. And the Center for Freethought Equality is the advocacy and political arm of the American Humanist Association. So what does it mean to be the advocacy and political arm of the American Humanist Association? So as a nonprofit, AHA has some limitations in what it can do in the political and electoral arenas, which I'll be discussing in more detail later. To remove these limitations, the Center for Freethought Equality was formed in 2004. The Center for Freethought Equality is a different type of nonprofit, which is allowed to lobby elected officials as its primary mission. So I hope you all know Rachel Deitch, who is our great lobbyist. The Center for Freethought Equality, unlike other nonprofits, can also have a membership political action committee. This PAC for us is the Freethought Equality Fund, and we can endorse and provide financial support to candidates. As a membership PAC, only members of the Center for Freethought Equality can be informed about the activities of the PAC. This federal PAC was formed in 2013. Membership in the Center for Freethought Equality is free, so I urge you to join so you can be kept up to date with all our activities. So these three organizations provide the tools necessary to increase our community's political clout. We have education with the American Humanist Association, advocacy with the Center for Freethought Equality, and electoral work with the Freethought Equality Fund PAC. So we do this work to diminish the bias against the atheist and humanist community, advance evidence-based public policy, preserve the secular nature of our government, and promote social justice. Tonight, I want to give you some information about the political advances that have been made possible by the Center for Freethought Equality, and what you can do as individuals and as a member of a humanist nonprofit in the electoral and political arena. You know, as I said, there are limitations on what nonprofit organizations can do during elections, but those restrictions should not prevent your group from taking allowable actions. With certain restrictions, nonprofit groups can and should be engaged in the political and electoral process. So the key restriction is that nonprofits cannot make or appear to make endorsements of candidates for elected office. So tonight, we won't be talking about individual candidates or even political parties, so I ask you to please refrain from doing so in the chat and during the Q&A too. You probably are not that familiar with the Center for Freethought Equality, so that's why I thank you for having me here today. But you might know about some of our accomplishments. We have four major things that I like to boast about, and I'll be talking about this morning. Because of our efforts, the taboo about atheists running for and holding office is now known to be defunct. Congressman Jared Huffman announced he's a humanist and agnostic. The Congressional Freethought Caucus was created, and we've had a 900% increase in the number of state legislators who identify with our community. So let me talk a little bit more about all four of those things. First, the atheist taboo. In 2017, I was talking to a candidate running for the state legislature in a very red West Texas district. And he told me he couldn't possibly be public about being an atheist because he lost 2/3 of his potential voters just by his party affiliation. And then even more because he was pro-choice and LGBTQ friendly. So as we were talking, I was thinking, well, who else are you going to lose by announcing you're an atheist? But he was adamant he couldn't do it. So as a good non-theist, I wanted data on the subject because we didn't have it. So the Center for Freethought Equality purchased some space on an election day poll in 2018 and had the survey company create questions to provide an answer. The results found that voters who favored Democratic candidates and were pro-choice and pro-marriage equality would overwhelmingly support an atheist candidate. 72% said that being an atheist would make no difference in their vote. And then an additional 10% said that they would be even more inclined to vote for the atheist candidate. So the numbers were even more favorable for candidates who identified as agnostic or non-religious or used another identifier rather than atheist. So that still leaves a portion of voters who support Democratic pro-choice and pro-LGBT candidates who were less likely to vote for the non-theist candidate. So the bias still exists against our community. and we still have a lot of work to do. However, the taboo is gone. So, case in point, we were instrumental in having Congressman Jared Huffman announce that he's a humanist and agnostic. He's the only public non-theist member of Congress. And this came about because in 2017, he returned a candidate questionnaire to our PAC, and he had an intriguing response to how he identified with regard to religion. So that started off a email message chain where we introduced ourselves and further discussed the topic. And finally, the email messages culminated in a dinner invitation with the Congressman, Roy Speckart, who's the Executive Director of the American Humanists Association, also attended, and myself. At dinner, we discussed the goals of our movement and the need for elected officials to publicly identify with our community. He agreed, and after his public announcement, Huffman received a great deal of supportive feedback from his constituents and colleagues. In fact, he got such positive feedback from his colleagues that he decided to form a caucus, and forming a caucus was one of the ideas we discussed at our earlier dinner together. So Huffman arranged an organizing meeting at his Capitol Hill townhouse, and Roy and I met with several members of Congress to form the caucus. After another meeting, which was held at the American Humanists Association headquarters, the necessary paperwork was prepared, and the Congressional Freethought Caucus was born. The caucus is a membership group in Congress, and its goals are to foster science and evidence-based public policy, and it also provides a forum for members of Congress to learn about the atheist and humanist community and our movement. Our last major accomplishment is that we've identified over 50 state legislators who are members of our community and are, more importantly, willing to be public about it. Now, this is up from just 5 state legislators prior to the 2016 elections. So that's a whopping 900% increase in 4 years. The sad thing is we need another 1,500 or so to reach parity with our population. So we still have a lot of work to do. Oregon has several state legislators who identify with our community. And because I'm talking about them as elected officials and not candidates, we can do so. That includes Pam March. She's from the Ashland area in the southern western side. Julie Fahey from the Eugene area in the central western section. And Marty Wilde, also from the Eugene area. So after the election, please invite these elected officials and others to talk to your group. They need to meet you. They need to know that there are members of their community in the state who want to get to know them, and they want to get to know you. So let's explore what you as an individual, besides joining the Center for Freethought Equality, can do to advance the interests of our community in the electoral arena. Obviously, the first thing you gotta do is register and then vote, not only in presidential elections, but in every election. Cast informed votes by researching candidates, not just at the top of the ticket, but in every contest on the ballot. The League of Women Voters has a great website called Vote 411. It's a great place to start your research. Once the ballots are settled, you can type in your information candidate that's going to appear on your ballot and every issue that's going to be on your ballot. And then you can go to issue advocacy groups that you support and see who they endorse and review their voter guides they produce. Conversely, you can look at the voter guides and endorsements of organizations that are diametrically opposed to your policy values and make your decisions and information on those groups. However, before you can vote, you got to be registered to vote, and make sure you're still registered to vote if you've moved or if you've not voted frequently. So the registration deadline in Oregon is Tuesday, October 13th. So please make sure you're registered. Once you are registered, then you actually have to cast your vote naturally. Just thinking about it doesn't work. Fortunately, in Oregon, you have an excellent mail voting system, but with the fires and with the post office slowdown, please complete and mail or drop off, if you have one of the drop-off boxes nearby, your ballot as soon as possible to make sure it's counted. In Oregon, you can actually track your ballot once you submit it. So your ballot must be received by November 3rd. And for the fires, I think it'll be curious. You want to tap into your Secretary of State's office to see what they're doing for folks who have been burnt out, because they've got to make allowances for those folks. Now, So voting is just the most basic and last step in getting the electoral outcomes you want. To really get the results you want, you also need to invest your time and money in the candidates you want to win. Think about how important it is that your candidates win, and then make a plan to invest your time and money accordingly. Create a budget for both how much money you can donate and how many hours you can volunteer, and then invest wisely in both. You can volunteer for individual candidates or for the political party of your choice. Volunteering is possible even during a pandemic and even during a firestorm. You can do no contact literature drops and get in a nice walk too, although that's more difficult for you guys now. Hopefully it'll clear up by election day somewhat. From your home, you can do things like addressing postcards and phone banking. Phone banking is excellent right now. You can use your smartphone to connect with a candidate's phone banking operations and talk to other voters. With phone banking, you can volunteer for candidates across the country, not just in your own area. You have to make sure you know what time zone you're calling in, because you don't want to anger potential voters by calling too early or too late. But the one positive thing about the pandemic is that people are generally at home and many are eager to talk to somebody new. So please take advantage of that and volunteer your time. And again, you can volunteer for candidates across the country. I also encourage you to attend online and in-person campaign events. Wear t-shirts, buttons, or pins. I got my little lapel pin on here. And other swag that identifies you with the atheist and humanist community. This is a great way to increase our visibility. And if you invite friends and go as a group, it's even more effective. Attendees will think that we're a movement, which is really what we want to be. Take a clue from Alice's Restaurant, get people out there, one person, two people, and before you know it, we're going to be a movement. So when possible, in a public forum, ask questions of the candidate that are important to our community and identify yourself as an atheist, humanist, agnostic, or whatever identifier you use. To turn out more votes, use your research that you've done to make sure your like-minded friends and relatives are registered, have a plan to vote, and are informed about the candidates. For your out-of-state contacts, NBC News has a great site called Plan Your Vote, to make sure their ballots get cast and counted. If they need help in voting, make sure you get them the resources they need. Use your personal contacts and social media to make sure these important connections are made and turn out more voters for your preferred candidates. So to sum up, as an individual, register and vote, inform and motivate your personal network, create a budget of your time and money to invest in the candidates, and implement these plans so that your vote is counted and your candidates get the support they need to win. So now let's move over to nonprofit groups. What can they do? And the great thing is your group can do a lot more than you may think. But again, you need your group to make a plan and consider the time and money it can invest in these tasks. So with just 51 days until the general election, some of the things I'm going to be talking to you about may be much too complicated to accomplish before the November 3rd election. But as I said before, your group should participate in every election, not just the presidential one. So now is a great time to place these projects on your calendar and for the future. The next midterms are much closer than they need to be, but now's the time to start planning for them. I know that's a horrible thing to say because we're with this election coming up, you feel that's enough that all you can focus on, but it should be a regular part of your programming to be involved in the political and electoral aspects that you can be. And this is important since we don't teach civics in school anymore, so your organization could take on that role. You could be a source of information about what it means to be an engaged citizen. Provide links. The Secular Values Voters website is great. This is a project of the Secular Coalition for America, and the Secular Student Alliance has taken it over and are doing great work with it. Make sure your members are aware of upcoming elections and the nonpartisan resources, to make informed decisions. And the Secular Values Voters has great information about registering and voting, doing voter registration drives, and also just voter engagement programs. So they're a great resource. Another excellent resource to know about that your group can do during elections is called bolder advocacy. This is the attitude, not the city in Colorado. It's BOLDER advocacy. And it's a project of the Alliance for Justice. And they outline everything that nonprofits can do. And the best thing about them, besides all the other resources they have, if you ever hit a gray area or one of your board members or constituents has an issue, they have this free service called Ask an Expert, and you can call or email them, and they'll provide you the answer, what's allowable and not allowable. So they're a tremendous resource. It's all free because they want more nonprofit groups to become active. So I'm going to give you a list of some of the things that nonprofit organizations can do. You can conduct nonpartisan voter registration, voter engagement, and get out the vote activities. Again, the Secular Values Voters is a great resource for these. Your group can send information packets to all the candidates about the issues that are important to your organization. This is a great way to help build visibility for our community, for your organization, and it promotes the issues that are important to us. Your group can create candidate questionnaires and prepare voter guides. Now, this one is complicated. There are many, many rules to follow, and I'm going to read some of them, not to discourage you from going ahead with candidate questionnaires and voter guides, but just to realize that you really need the help of bolder advocacy to make sure that you do it right. So, for example, you have to reach out to all the candidates. The question shouldn't indicate a correct answer. Don't ask candidates to pledge their support for an issue. Don't grade the candidate's questionnaire or compare to their answers to your organization's stances. You want to use open-ended questions rather than yes/no questions. Include questions on a broad range of issues, not just the issues that are key to your group. You can't coordinate with a candidate in creating the questionnaire, and you have to publish all the responses impartially and make them available to the general public. Now, you don't have to remember all this. Again, just use bolder advocacy's resources to ensure that you're doing everything correctly. But it can really make a difference on informing your members and the general public about candidates. You can also create legislative scorecards for incumbents. Like the questionnaires, this has to be done impartially and without coordination with elected officials, and should again include a broad range of topics. But please don't make your first legislative scorecard during an election year. You got to show impartiality, so this should be an ongoing project if you're going to do it. And again, don't start it during an election year. But here's my favorite one. You can, your group, sponsor or co-sponsor candidate debates. Again, this needs to be done impartially, and all the candidates have to be invited to participate in the event. If you're involved with a social or economic justice alliance, work with them to co-sponsor candidate debates and make this project a regular part of your programmatic work. Again, it's an amazing way to increase your visibility, get the issues you care about out there, and to be recognized as a constituency that elected officials and candidates need to address. So again, if these tasks aren't already in your group's program pipeline, you're not going to be able to do it this election year, but now's the time to start planning to see what things appeal to your membership and your group, and work one or more of these into your regular programming. So, but you still have lots of time, and this is extremely important, to make sure that all your members are registered and that they vote. Be a resource. Like I said before, you might want to provide some links or information from your Secretary of State's office to how they're dealing, excuse me, with the fire situation, on making sure that everybody gets their ballot in the mail. And again, you link off to the resource. Excuse me, I'm having a Marco Rubio moment here. All right, last, and very importantly, your group's civil engagement does not end on election day. After the election, please continue your civic involvement. Ask elected officials to talk to your group. Again, this is all about increasing your visibility and promoting the issues that are important to you. Ask former candidates to talk to your members about their campaigns. This will build relationships and perhaps encourage some of your members to run for office. Our PAC has great information on endorsed candidates going back to 2014, and the Center for Freethought Equality has over 70 elected officials who identify with our community at the federal, state, and local level, who want and need to be better connected with the atheist and humanist community. So invite them to speak to your group. So I really appreciate your participation in this meeting. As members of our community become more politically engaged and organized, we will empower our movement and increase our political clout. Our active political engagement will help to promote evidence-based public policy to effectively address issues that confront us, like climate change and the pandemic. Our active engagement will also increase the visibility of the atheist and humanist community and help diminish the lingering bias against us. Our active engagement will help build a society that we're proud to live in. We all need to be very active and engaged to make this happen, but it's possible. Regardless of what Chris Hedges says, we can make an effort. And just being in the fight should be satisfying. So, but being in the fight and moving our people forward and being more engaged is well worth it. And if that's not enough of a reason to become more politically engaged, just consider that your active participation in the political process will help counter the white Christian nationalists that are far too powerful in our political culture. And our participation will help bring their bigoted, anti-science, racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, and homophobic crusade to an end. And to be quite frank, that's what gets me into work every day. So I hope that encourages some of you to be more involved. With that, I'll urge you to become a member of the Center for Freethought Equality. It's still free to do so. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ron, for your excellent work and a fine presentation today. I'll start with a couple of quick questions. And my question is, two questions are there any Republicans that are members of the Freethought Caucus? And I'll let you answer that first.
Not yet. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try, but when you realize about how the Christian nationalists have really dominated that party, I can't think of anyone offhand who's pro-choice, LGBTQ friendly, and some might mouth the words occasionally, but actually voting records, I don't know anyone who champions those causes.
Okay, and my second question is, it seems to me that voter turnout is really going to be the key to this election. And what organization, if we could volunteer with one or give money to one organization, which one would you recommend for voter turnout?
Now the name has escaped me, but well, for voter turnout, it is investing in candidates, because that's their job to get voter turnout. So I would say, if you're going to invest money in the candidates that you want to win, and it's their job to turn out votes, rather than a generic. Because the fact of the matter is, there are a lot of groups that do nonpartisan voter engagement and are pushing out voters, but we would like to be a little more strategic about it, and you want like-minded voters to go out and vote, not just everyone. So again, if you support your candidates, they're going to get their voters out.
Sounds good. Dave DiNucci, you have the next question.
Well, first of all, let me get a clarification on your last answer. So I think one of the reasons the question is about getting voter turnout is it sounds like that's something that an organization like ours could do very fairly without instead putting the money under one candidate, which sounds like it would raise all kinds of alarm bells, et cetera. So is that true? I mean,
your group should never give money to a candidate or appear to endorse a candidate. And you, like I said before, you have the names and contact information of your membership. And make sure that they have the resources they need to get registered and to vote. And do it wisely. Like I said before, with all the opposition out there on voter turnout and just the natural disasters that are happening and the post office slowdown, don't prevaricate. Once you get that ballot in the mail, fill it out correctly and get it back to the elected officials, election officials, as soon as possible. You want to make sure your ballot is counted.
Okay. The other part of my question is about, again, things that we can do and things we have tried to do in the past. One of them being to actually get some of the different candidates that are actually running during that season in, and often we will not try to have a debate where we're inviting them both at the same time, but instead inviting one at a time to come in and give their pitch, or not give their pitch, give a talk about something else. I'm wondering how careful we have to be about that sort of thing. It seems like we've been extremely careful. I sometimes think too careful. For example, if one of the candidates comes in and perfectly understandably, is campaigning while he's there, wants to hand out leaflets or whatever, should we be worried about that? We have had an issue in the past where we've invited different candidates on different days, and some are able to make it and some aren't, and then we can look a little bit, like we're choosing even when we're not. But I'd just like to hear your feedback on some of that.
Sure. To make sure that you're impartial, I think it's really important to have the candidates, all the candidates there at the same event. And that way, if they are, that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're supposed to be seeking your vote. But that way, if all the candidates are there, your organization can't be seen as being favoring one side or the other. But when you have them individually, that can be a possibility. So if a candidate can't make it to the event that you're sponsoring, make sure that they have the ability to offer surrogates to come in place of them. But I think it is important to have everybody there at once, just to make sure that your organization is seen as impartial. And of course, you read a statement that you as an organization are not supporting one candidate or the other, that you're doing this event for educational purposes for the community.
Okay, the next question is from Al Christians.
You're fine. Okay, I'd like to ask about, you say there's no taboo anymore about being a free thinker as far as running for elective office. How about for the possibility that there'll be a free thinker in the cabinet next year? How would you compare the chances of having a free thinker in the cabinet compared to, say, other groups that were previously unlikely to be appointed to anything? For example, Islamic believers, let's say, people of alternative sexual preferences. We're ever going to get a Quaker for Secretary of Defense? Does a Humanist have a better chance of being Secretary of State than a Quaker has of being Secretary of Defense? Where do we stand compared to these other groups as far as getting some representation at the highest level in government?
It would be great to have a cabinet member who identifies with our community, and I'm hoping that happens. We would love to have some judges also who identify with our community. That hasn't happened yet. For all of these things, they're never given to you. You have to be recognized as a powerful constituency to sort of force the issue. And that's why we've got to mobilize and be recognized as a constituency. So that is the hope. If we get more elected officials who identify with us, we'll have more people who get plucked to get some of these prime positions. And again, it all builds to create visibility for our community, diminish the bias even further, and promote our policy values. So we don't have it, we're not there yet, but that's why we got to keep working harder.
Okay, we have a question from David Beam.
Yeah, my question's this. I try to keep things simple. There's the people we don't want to get elected. There's the people we do want to get elected, but there's always these middle people, the undecideds. And for me, personally, I would prefer to work on that angle of it. I don't want to preach to the choir, but I certainly don't want to support the people I don't want to support. So the question, are you aware of any organization that kind of works towards the undecideds?
Well, again, all these candidates have war chests that are reaching out to try to get their majorities. I don't think it's in our best interest as a movement to reach out to the undecideds. I think we have a more pressing issue reaching out to younger voters who might not be as enthusiastic to vote for candidates or participate in elections. And, you know, since a large part of our community are younger voters, we've really got to get them engaged. And so I think that's a better focus for our movement, our community, rather than trying to reach out to undecided voters and try to sway them. We've got to organize our own community first. And I've been doing progressive politics for 30 some years, and it's rare that there's a candidate that I'm extremely thrilled about, and you always just have to vote for the candidate who will move your agenda forward, even if it's not as advanced as you would like it to be.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
But just to fill the space, I apologize for not being more long-winded. Even though midlife, I was trained as an academic, I realized very early on that I was not going to be able to do those 3-hour presentations to students because I just don't have that much knowledge to impart. And I don't like to hear myself speak that long. So 20 minutes is about as far as I can go on one breath. So I hope you have more questions.
I wonder if you would comment on there are two approaches that I've seen by the Vote Forward movement. My Small Indivisible group writes letters with that group to bring out the vote. But originally, the first forms, the first letters that I got were intentionally non-partisan. And the philosophy was that the more people you get registered to vote, a higher percentage of those will be Democrats. Now we write with another group called Tony the Democrat, and they are very clearly partisan. And one of the statements you have to have on the postcard is when more people vote, Dems win. So are both of those valid philosophies?
They are, and it really depends on the organization. You know, like for your organization, you know, you're going to want to turn out general members and not be partisan. For other groups who, like most nonprofits, are formed under the 501c3 category, which I'm assuming you guys are. And then you have organizations that form under the 501c4 category, which is what the Center for Freethought Equality is. And we can be more partisan. And like I said before, we have a PAC that can be completely partisan. So it depends on the organization. You know, you as a C3, you know, you want to turn out voters. And so the way to turn out voters that are going to advance your policy goal is to turn out voters from your membership and from like-minded folks that your members know, and get them to vote. And again, the best way to do that is the personal connection. Peer pressure is a wonderful thing when used correctly. So
we have a question from Helen.
Yeah, you know, our organization has been around for many years, and I'm very proud of it. But I think it's, in my mind, and it's primarily a lecture series. I've learned so much by attending each Sunday morning. But you know, what you're talking about is really engaging your membership, from just making sure they're registered to vote to really working towards being accepted as humanists as a movement. And I'm just curious, how do you engage members to be more politically active, or, you know, I'd really appreciate your thoughts on that.
Sure. And, you know, you can maintain the lecture series format, but just make sure that the people who are speaking talk about, you know, what it means to be engaged in your, you know, in your society, the whole civic engagement, which includes elections, but is also a little broader.
Okay, go ahead.
And also in a lecture format, you can also have elected officials, you know, outside of the election season, come and discuss what they're doing. And that format works well to, again, be seen as a constituency to the elected officials, whether they're members of our community or not, and to talk about the issues that are important to your community. So you really, if you're hesitant to step outside of the lecture format, just build the politics into the lecture topics that you're interested in doing. But again, I would encourage you to be that civic education that we're just not getting, and link off to the nonpartisan resources that people know, or that are out there, so that people know how to become more engaged. And then once you enjoy doing that, you might move into legislative scorecards or candidate forums or other fun things like that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question from our president, Mr. Wayne Harris.
Hi, Ron. Glad you're here. I got two things. One is, I live in Salem, and we're currently sending out a group I belong to. We're sending out 13,000 get out the vote cards, postcards, in the Marion County district down here. So that kind of stuff really works. We found out in the past that postcards and mailers do work, even though a lot of times we throw them in the trash when you get them, but they do work. And the second thing is, what's involved if we wanted to start a political arm of our group?
You would have to create a 501c4, which is sort of the, what the Center for Freethought Equality is. So it's, again, you register with the IRS like you did with your C3 organization. And then that group can be more active politically and do more lobbying. It's also potential just to not even do that, but have, if a group of your membership is interested, you could form in Oregon a separate and non-connected political action committee that focuses on state races, state and local. So, if you have a subgroup in your organization that wants to form a state PAC, you can do that. It just wouldn't be connected to your organization. But obviously your membership would be connected, or some of your members would be connected.
Okay, thanks.
We have a question from Lawrence.
I guess I'm a little unclear about something that's just hanging in the background here, and that has to do with identifying as atheist/humanist. I think you mentioned that there was one member of Congress who so identified, but don't you think that at least half of the members of Congress, if not more, are actually secularists who are, I hate to use the word closeted, or like this thing doesn't really come up? I think that business about religious affiliation doesn't come up a lot. And so I'm wondering how the fact that we identify ourselves as humanists, I don't know that many people have the bumper stickers and the button. You have a button or T-shirts that make us visible as belonging to a secularist organization, and how that fact would be relevant to promoting the things that you were talking about. I'm just unclear about that kind of a connection. For that matter, Chris Hedges, the person that I did a reading from, I didn't mention it because it wasn't relevant. He happens to be an ordained Presbyterian minister. Doesn't come up, has nothing to do with the message he puts out. So that's just another example of, so where's the relevance of our atheism/humanism? I'm being a little bit wordy here. One of our members has a really good adjective. I think it's Robert. He says apatheist, which means being apathetic toward this whole thing. Like, you don't even bring it up. And so apart from our, leading lives of good example, where does the identification thing come in?
Sure. And it is important. If you're part of the dominant culture, you don't have to talk about your religion. Chris Hedges doesn't have to mention that he's a Protestant. But we play the identity politics because we are an underrepresented group. And we're most underrepresented in American politics. And that's why I'm so eager to do the work that I do, because it does make a difference when a member of Congress says, yes, I don't hold a God belief. Pete Stark was the first one in 2007 to do that. And that was when I was with the Secular Coalition for America that he announced. And that was the first time any member of Congress ever said that. So, 2007, we had our first non-theist. And the identity politics is important because our group does have a bias against it. And the only way you can get rid of that bias is by having respected people identify, leaders identify with our community. So it gets rid of all the preconceived notions that people have about what an atheist or a humanist or an agnostic is. So nobody likes playing the identity politics card. We all like to be seen as individuals. But when you're a discriminated against group who's underrepresented, it's important to have that visibility. And that's why we do the work.
Yeah, thank you.
We have another question from David Beam.
Thank you. I just have a curiosity question. I always view mostly atheists, the people that I always see, they're all pretty much to the left. But I would imagine there's got to be some right-wing atheist out there, although I don't know who they are, and they seem to be pretty much unicorns. So, but I'm sure they're out there. And so, what have you met on the political side of that? And I guess sort of complementary question to that is, if you were to hazard a guess of what atheists, what percentage are right-wingers and which ones are left, what would you say that would be? Just hazard a guess.
Sure. Not having a belief in the supernatural does not mean that a unified group, we're all over the place in the political spectrum. However, when they do the election day polling, I think it's 7 out of 10 religiously unaffiliated people, which includes the non-theists and some theists. 7 out of 10 vote for the Democratic candidate generally. So I think we lean as a community that way. But again, there's it's the whole spectrum within the atheist, humanist, and non-theist movement. But again, promoting evidence-based public policy, respecting individual rights, respecting LGBTQ rights, not making women subservient, and not allowing them to control their reproductive rights. It does tend to bias towards evidence-based public policy. We know that abstinence education doesn't work, and those are topics that split between parties. So I think it's fairly natural for our community to be more heavily on one party than another.
Okay, thank you.
If we want to get away from just whoops,
I'm
hold
sorry,
on.
I goofed up. Okay.
If we want to if you want to win, sometimes you have to pick your battles, and as far as issues that might be of importance to free thinkers at the present time, which are the issues that we can win on now, that we would want to present ourselves as wanting some kind of a change that we could actually get, and which are the ones that we should stay away from because it'll turn everybody against us?
Well, I mean, I think, especially as individuals, it's important to promote the issues that you're passionate about, whether that's reproductive rights, LGBTQ equality, church-state separation, whatever those might be. As a group, as non-theists, I think we have to be out there pushing climate change, because, we're just not going to exist, or not going to exist as we used to exist, because right now we're living in very different times, unless we take some bold action there. And if our community can be out front on that, pushing it, saving our civilization, I think most people can get behind. And it's amazing that we have a whole contingent of people who aren't. And so that I think is an issue we can sell and get people involved with.
Margie writes a good question in the chat. Ron, you might have a comment or some information on this. She asks, how many 503c organizations have lost their tax exempt status for political activity in recent years?
Not a single one, I don't believe. And this predates the current administration. It's been a while now. They've changed, Congress years ago changed the rules that only a certain person within the IRS could follow up complaints with religious organizations violating the regs on promoting candidates. And I don't even know if that person is employed at the current time. They just followed out our government. So, so yeah, there is no current recourse. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think anybody wants to push it in the courts that much, because with this Supreme Court, we don't know what the outcome would be on that. So yeah, they're going to continue. Like I said before, when you look at their voter guides, they're all heavily weighted towards the outcome that they want, and there's no nonpartisan aspect about it. But for our organizations, I think it's incredibly important that we follow the rules to a T, because since we are not the dominant political culture, it's easy for the dominant political culture to crack down on people like ourselves. So we have to be extra vigilant to make sure we follow all the rules.
Gail Myrna had a comment right before she had to leave that was a follow-up to Lauren's question. She said there are a number of right-wing atheists on the libertarian side of politics.
Yeah, but it's interesting. On the libertarian side, you'll have libertarians who are pro-choice and pro-LGBTQ equality, that their focus is an unfettered capitalism, and that's really all they care about: small government and business. So, it is possible to build alliances on certain issues across that political spectrum. But yeah, there are quite a few. I mean, Ayn Rand, who is the best known libertarian, was not religious, and I always wanted to know why Paul Ryan, who loved her so much, didn't follow suit. But that was the one thing he rejected with Ayn Rand. So,
hi Ron, thanks for being here. In appreciation, we'd like to offer you a HGP mug that we'll be sending to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.